Hey, ¿qué pasa, Calexico? Welcome back to the podcast. So we're 3 days from midterms from the voting, and I think not only locally but nationally, it's like kind of exciting. Like everybody's like on their tip of the toes trying to figure out what's gonna happen. And like I said, even though nationally it's like big, like who's gonna win the House, who's gonna win Congress. Locally, we also have really important, decisions to make. Whether it's your city council, whether it's county supervisors or IID. And today we have one of the candidates for IID Division 5, Ms. Norma Sierra Galindo. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for some time.
Yeah. So we're 3 days away from the election.
That we are.
It's. I think your race has, at least to me, has been more of a, out there, like, you and your opponent have been going to doors, posting signs. It's been, you've had a couple of, what do you call it? Lost the, debates.
Yes, forums. Mm-hmm.
I think I haven't seen any other, IID race, doing that. Are you guys?
No, because the other two races, there were three altogether, but the other two were determined in June.
Oh, okay.
So the one, was it two or three? No, there were three. Geez, I'm losing track of time. There were three seats that came up, and the three incumbents ran. That would have been Division 1, Salas, Director Salas, and then up in the north end, Director Hanks, and then Division 5, which is Galindo. But Salas's and Hanks were determined in June.
Oh, okay.
So they ended. And what we did have as a result of that, we had Director Hanks retain his seat, albeit by a relatively slim margin, but he did retain it. And then Director Salas is no longer going to be a director as of December.
Okay. So usually I start off, I got a little bit ahead, but I start off, with my guests introducing themselves. Tell us a little bit about, because I know you're a Valley resident for most of your life, right?
Yes, I was raised in the Holtville, Calexico area, although I was raised out in the country. So the areas where I lived actually were part of Holtville, but all of my schooling after my graduation from 8th grade was done in Calexico. Okay. So I have a tremendous affinity for both communities. I teach at Calexico High School. I've been teaching there for 14 years. I did leave the Valley when I graduated from high school, as a lot of us do. And then several years later, I came back. Both of my parents were at that time elderly and ailing. And I had circumstances in my life that mandated I make a change. I was living in Arizona at the time, so I came back to the Valley. And at that time, I started working for Brawley Schools. And I just became such a dear member of that community that I just also have a tremendous affinity for that. And I would like to thank Dick Fergali. I don't know if he's listening, but everything that I am now was because of what Dick Fergali did for me when I came back to the Valley.
Okay. And then, when did you get into,
the political?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's been more or less in my, I don't know if I should say if in my genes or in my blood. We don't have politicians in my family, and I prefer not to be called a politician. I prefer to be called a statesman. And the reason for that is because I do believe in making and implementing policy, whereas politicians, they just walk around and spew rhetoric, and that is not me at all. But I was quite active in my high school, and I will backtrack just because I think all of this builds to what you ultimately turn out to be. But I was valedictorian of my graduating class at Jasper, and I was awarded the American Legion Award of Leadership. Then when I came to high school, I was the first Mexican ASB president, female, not Mexican, female, because Calexico had lots of Mexicans. And I was the first female ASB president that the school ever had. So, and then also I participated in Girl State, which was also sponsored by the American Legion. So that gave me an opportunity to understand and become involved in issues of politics. And during that time, of course, it was the Vietnam War. So it was a very contentious time for a lot of us. And many of us, including me, did not understand what was going on. And then fast forward to my years in college and my years after that, I ended up living in Arizona. And I returned to Imperial County in the late 80s. And that's when I, again, became, when you leave the valley and you come back, regardless of the amount of time you're gone, it's like you never left. Yeah. It's like a time warp. Yeah. Most of the guys I went to school with are now either immigration officers or cops. The girls are teachers. And so we all more or less followed our trends. But when I returned to the Valley was when we were contemplating issues of selling the water for the first time, the issues with the Bass Brothers, and those that know about water sales will know, which was just a group of very, very, very wealthy people from Texas who came in and actually purchased a lot of our land with intention of not farming it or developing it, but actually selling the water. Because those that are futuristic in thought always see what's 30 years down the road. Yeah. And we've taken water for granted forever because we do have the largest allocation of water in the Valley. In all of the Colorado, yeah. Mm-hmm. But when we look at the droughts and we look at what's coming, we look at the building of the coast, how much San Diego has grown, how much Riverside County has grown. People are looking at, so what is it that you need? Well, you need the land to build, but you need the water. Yeah. So that's when I started. Becoming engaged and involved. It did take many years after that, but when Anthony Sanchez was director, this was before we redistricted, I was very concerned about his policies, or the lack of. Anthony was not, in my opinion, truly representative of our community and what our community needed to do. And he was very easily swayed by the special interest. So I did. I ran against him once and lost to him by just a handful of votes. So then after that, 2 years later, he had to resign. And then I then said, well, okay, this is the opportunity again. I already have a base. My name is out there. And in between this, I had already, because I was in education, I had been elected to the Community College Board of Trustees. Okay. So, you put all of that together and you have the knowledge and you know the people and you definitely know the issues. So when I ran to take over Anthony's seat, I did win and I won significantly, but that was only a 2-year term because it was only to finish his term. And so then I ran again for the first full term. And I won again. And so this would be my second full term. I am right now concluding my 6th year as director. Okay, so
if you get reelected, it would be your second full term?
It will be my second full term.
Is there a limit for how many times?
There is not. Okay. No, not yet. They talk a lot about term limits. Personally, I believe that term limits are set by the voters. And when the voters finally decide that they do not want a particular candidate, then they vote them out. Yeah. But yes, I do have, and I would like to, like I said earlier, continue and try to finish what I started in the last 6 years.
Because a lot of people don't know the importance of the IID is to our community. Like like you said, water is really
it's the lifeblood.
Yeah. If you kind of like dumb it down, like why is it important to have somebody in the board that's asking the right questions or or looking out for our community. Like, what are some of the decisions that are like on the table, or you see people talking about that might impact our communities?
Well, the only source of water we have to both farming and the municipalities and industry is by way of our allocation through the Colorado River. There's no other way that we can get water. Okay. And I think that the board itself has evolved over the years because traditionally the board was run by male farmers. Okay? And the trend started to change when Tony Gallegos ran for the board, who is not a farmer. And he was elected back in the, I want to say, the early 90s. Then he left the board, and then Rudy Maldonado was elected. Rudy is he's a former employee of IID. Oh. And then after that, Stella Mendoza came, who was not only the first female, but the first Mexican-American to be elected. Nonetheless, you have three people that are really not farmers. So the perspective changes. Doesn't mean that Tony or Rudy or Stella, or I included, are not pro-farming. I think that, and many people will tell you, there has never been anybody on the farm more pro-farming than I am. Unfortunately, I am not a farmer, and I am not wealthy. So that sometimes changes the perspective. And I'm not a man, and that's another issue. So when we look at what my role is when I took the oath of office, I not only swore to defend unconditionally the Constitution of the state of California, but to also do my duty as a fiduciary of the water that is everybody's water. It's as much your water, who lives in a house with 2 bedrooms and you have a cat and a dog and a child, as it is for the person down the street who is a farmer and farms 1,000 acres. There is no distinction in the proprietorship of the water. Okay, and so because of the value of the water, not to us as much because we take it for granted, but what this water is worth, say in the metropolitan areas like San Diego, and I just talk about Las Vegas because they're the biggest takers. Because of what our water is valued, my job is to ensure that we first take care of ourselves, and that whatever we have left, we still dedicate that water to developing industry here and to continue farming here instead of selling it and enjoying the fruits of the sale for a short period of time, but the long-term effects can be just absolutely devastating. So what we are looking at now, Mr. Alejos, is we are looking at a lawsuit that has been brought onto the district by one family, okay? It is a long-established family, in farming, but this family portends to claim that this family's right to the water is over and above in priority than anybody else's rights. That's number one. And then the second thing, it also exposes the thought and the idea, after the Judge Anderholt's ruling, that the IID is the fiduciary of the water, but because the farmers use 97% of this water, they really are the ones that need to be entitled to the ownership and the distribution of the water. Okay?
Yeah.
So how do you translate, like you say, to the layman? Well, basically, it's very simple. You have a natural resource that is there for the benefit of all of us, that suddenly would become privatized. And when anything is privatized due to our system of capitalism, then it's got to be used for profit. And so then the water takes a totally different value. And we look now at how much is this water worth and how much money can we make off of it. Regardless of what the proponents and the supporters of this lawsuit, regardless of what they say, at the end of the day, the water would change hands from the public to the private. And then the private could then determine the price of the water. And it would have a domino effect on all the industry, on all of the jobs that we have here. Because again, when you look at what water is worth at this time versus what Vegas is willing to pay for it, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
So my job is I have seen it, and I see it after having taken the oath of office, is to continue to defend this right that belongs to all of us and to continue to manage it for the benefit of all of us, including farming and paramount. Farming is paramount to our livelihood.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's crazy. Yeah, it's like eye-opening, like.
Very much. And let me make a clarification. Even recently, 2 days ago, I was in a meeting and there were some teachers, all of whom have masters and, educated people. And the comment that one of them made was, well, if you get in, are you going to lower our water rates? And this just gives me an idea of how detached a lot of us are from the reality, okay? So you can't presume that it's only the laymen that don't know the issues with the water. It's even the educated people. And that's perfectly fine. They're busy out there working. They're busy educating our kids, and they're trying to live their life. But this is the deal. We have nothing to do. IID has nothing to do with the price of water that you are paying here in Calexico. Absolutely nothing. Yeah. Other than we have made this water extremely affordable to you as a city. We lowered the price by 75%, the actual cost of the acre foot of water about 3 years ago. So all of a sudden, the city finds itself saving well over $250,000, and yet then they come back and try to tell you that they need to raise the price of water significantly to improve the infrastructure. I have issues with that, and I have issues with the city council that wants to do that, and I'll tell you why. First of all, there was never even an acknowledgement by the city council that these rates were lowered. From $83 to $20 an acre foot, that's significant. Wow. Okay. Secondly, infrastructure. Why doesn't the city council look more at making sure that all the lights are up, that there's security in the city, that the police force get enlarged or go back to its original numbers, that the roads get fixed? Why do you have to look at infrastructure from the inside out? On the back of the ratepayers? And if I were a dweller here in Calexico, I would be absolutely up in arms on this. Because
what I heard was that since I guess our facilities were so out of date that it was costing them more money to maintain them to the...
Yes, but with the savings of us having lowered the price of water, there is your savings already.
Yeah.
See? So from one day, and we're being televised, right?
No, it's not.
No, we're not. Okay. No. So let me give you an analogy of what an acre foot of water is. That's the unit of measure that we use. Okay. So if you think of Calexico High School's football field, all of the parameters of it, okay, that would be an acre, okay? And if you fill that up 12 inches high, which is 1 foot, with water, that is your acre foot. The great majority of us do not use more than an acre foot to an acre foot and a half of water on an annual basis, all right? And yet we're selling this to the city for $20. Now, I don't know how much you're paying, but I would assume you're paying about $100 a month for your water, and that they want to raise it to $140. I'm not sure what the fees are.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, so just imagine all of a sudden you're paying, let's say the city, for the sake of argument, is using 100 acre feet of water to supply water to the city. At $80 an acre foot, 80 times 100 is what? $80,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then suddenly that drops to 20. So all of a sudden, you go from paying $80,000 for the water to paying $20,000 for it. What are you going to do with those $60,000? Shouldn't that have been your infrastructure project?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and this is, and you know what? I consider myself a representative of all people.
Mm-hmm.
And who am I to judge or criticize the city council? But the city council needs to look at this, and your city manager needs to look at this. So have enough respect for the people to say, we just want to raise the water prices because we have to pay more for outsourcing the water and sewer, which, by the way, were jobs that Calexico once had, and now those jobs are gone, okay, because we're subcontracting it with somebody else. And we want to do this, that, and the other on your back.
Yeah.
Then people will at least know where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the issues. These are the issues. And so my job is, number one, to continue to provide the water as cheaply as possible, and to make sure that you have as much right to the water as the farmer down the street in perpetuity.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to the, this is really, good information. I hope everybody like listens and really pay attention, because it's big. It's not like cents. It's a big amount of money that will be coming out of our pockets.
And then there are two parts to this issue that we haven't touched on the second one. Mm-hmm. Again, let's backtrack. When the district was founded, we were given by nature what we call gravity flow, which is when the American Canal was constructed and the water was diverted from the Colorado River to come down to the valley. It doesn't have to be pumped. It just flows downhill. So we said, well, what happens when water drops? We can create hydroelectric power. So we became a power company, and we are a publicly owned power company. Okay, but it's a result of the water. So the less water that's flowing through our canals, the less power we're going to be able to generate. Now, the other issue is that the powers that want to be, not the powers that be, but I say the powers that want to be, who are the powers that would like to gain control of the water, they don't care about the energy part. And what this would do is it would bifurcate the district. In other words, it would split it in half. And then more than likely a municipal water district would be created that would answer to its stakeholders and to its board of directors, who in turn are there to make profit out of the water. So what happens to the power and your power rates? Then a company like Cal Edison or SDG&E or U.S. Electric, any of those companies, they would come in and take over our power. And guess what that would do to your power rates?
Yeah.
See?
I mean,
so people need to look at this from a holistic perspective.
Yeah, because I mean, we use a lot of electricity, like especially during the summer.
And we create it.
Yeah.
Now, it's really hard to convince people when you say we have the lowest rates in California, and we do, especially when in the middle of August, right?
Yeah.
But again, if you take your house, let's say your house, for the sake of argument, is 2,400 square foot, and in the middle of August, your bill comes in because you've had that AC going, you're watering extra and all, and your bill is $300 for the sake of argument. That very same house, very same size, same number of people living, all the dynamics the same. On the other side of Washington Street in Coachella or in San Diego would be paying $700 a month.
Yeah.
And that's how we can compare.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because people's, like, in the summer, they get a $300 light bill, and they're, like, freaking out. But in reality, it's like, if you compare it, like you say, it's cheap.
Yes. And these other companies, of course, because we're publicly owned, we don't run it for profit. The other companies that would come in and take over have to answer to their stakeholders. So you know what? Your annual rate increases are a given. It's the bottom line. Yeah. You have to deal with issues of natural disasters and infrastructure, and suddenly all of that will be factored into that budget. So yes, it's a very serious thing. And so, I love my community. I love my teachers, my students, and I complain every summer about how darn hot it is. But you know what? There is no place better to raise a family, to live and work than it is here. And by golly, I am going to do everything I can to try to maintain whatever it is we have here.
Yeah.
And we're very fortunate.
What's your slogan? You can't.
Experience matters. That's one of them. And also, I think experience matters is a major one.
I think there's no substitute for experience.
There is no substitute for experience.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes, and by that I need to quantify it as historical knowledge, okay, working knowledge, and 6 years of experience on the board. Yeah. Because anybody can say you're quote unquote educated, okay? We all have degrees. Some of us less than others, some of us more than others. We all say that we love the ag industry. You know what? It's very kosher to say that it's sort of like the newborn, what is it called? The born again farm workers, that now all of the Chicanos and even others, my dad was a farm worker. They don't know diddly squat about picking up a hoe and working all day weeding those fields. They don't. Let me tell you that they don't. But it's very romantic now, right? It's very sexy. And so it's also very sexy to say, I've worked in agriculture. Well, you know what?
You're in your truck sitting.
You sit in your truck, air conditioned, or you're a contractor that's a middleman that still pays the farm workers $80 a day, and you're making $300 for hiring them. Give me a break, But having said so much, very rarely do the people that tell you they have experience in ag will tell you, I pitched watermelons in the middle of the summer. No. I worked for Black Dog Farms, or I worked for Joe Maggio, and I was in their accounting department, or I was in the packing shed. Give me a break, man. If you weren't out in the field sweating it, you have not worked in agriculture. It's the bottom line.
And to me, like, just speaking to you today, it's like, I don't know if you're just, pulling names out of the air, but like when you say all these names, like it seems to me like you've done your research. All the history of the IID. Like
I do.
So like, I mean, to me, it's like, you can really vouch on that experience. Like you can really say like, I have experience, or because not only have you been in the board for a while now, but like you've done your homework, you've done your research,
Yes, and a lot of this knowledge, the historical knowledge, it comes from my father. I mean, I remember my father talking about Joe Maggio, or talking about the Abadis, or talking about, my father worked for the Menville brothers. So there's a basic knowledge that I started acquiring back in 1963, and you don't forget a lot of this. There is one incident that I remember so distinctly every time I drive by Anderholt and Jasper Road, because we had just moved to our homestead in Calexico, when one of the local farmers shot a Mexican guy in the back down the street from his house, and he said it was in self-defense. Okay, prominent family. Most of that family went to school here in Calexico. And I remember my dad saying, how can you shoot someone in the back and say you were defending yourself? Well, obviously nothing ever happened. I mean, after all, it was probably just another Mexican that was whatever, at the risk of sounding crude, but that's how we've been treated in many, many ways. But not everybody has treated us that way. We have some farming members that are extremely respectful of us and of our labor and of our children, and want us to do better. But so it's not really an issue of the bad farmers versus the good farmers. It's really an issue of money and greed versus poverty, and you're poor because you want to be, or if that's all you can do, then that's all you can do. And that's got to change. because when affirmative action came around, and I would not be here if it weren't for affirmative action. And I've heard people say, when they hear me speak, we should have never trained the monkey. Okay? I mean, yeah. So, you know what? For better or for worse, when we awaken, we're a force to be contended with. And I'm not talking about the ethnicity. I'm talking about the poor, uneducated people. That suddenly you have access to books, and my God, watch out.
So going back to that, to the never train the monkey. You're really outspoken. You're really like
very.
Como decimos, tiene pelos en
la lengua.
Have you gotten any backlash because of that? Like,
absolutely. And I think the biggest backlash I have is just because outspoken women are not accepted, even by outspoken men. Okay, because I have said things. Take for example my last forum. Okay, no, my first forum. A couple of the would-be supporters got up and left in the middle of the forum and said, "I was disgusted by your comments," and that bothered me because I like these people, I love these people, and you never want to disappoint the people you love. Had I been a guy saying what I said, you know what they would have said? He really knows what he's talking about. Boy, he gave it to him. See? So I'm always going to have to contend with this. I've always contended with this. But I'm 67 years old, even though I still look like I'm 66. So I don't have time to pussyfoot around. I do try to be as diplomatic as I can when the need calls for it. But you have to call them as you see them, because sometimes you are talking to the masses, and that's what the masses understand. And actually, at the end of the day, that's what people appreciate. They will see that you're not really trying to offend anybody. But you know what? La verdad ofende. ¿Cómo? La verdad no ofende, pero incomoda. Okay? So the truth is going to make you uneasy, either way you look at it. If it didn't make you uneasy, you can give, flying patoot about what is said. So, agarra fama y acuéstate a dormir. I'm already seen as that, and a lot of people say, that's what I love about you, but these people will never acknowledge my friendship in public. They don't want to be seen with me there. But, I get all these texts, oh, you were great, you were this, but it's just, it's not a kosher thing. And, I've tried not to cuss in public anymore, and I'm doing pretty good with that. I've tried to also not mention names unless I am very sure of the information and all. But the truth is out there, and it's not going to go away. So yes, I suffer quite a bit for this. But at the end of the day, what I say is my truth. It's a lot of people's truths. Nothing is embellished, and it is all with the intention of doing the right thing.
Going back to what you said, that you got your kind of like your start in high school, or middle school in the 60s. Comparing, the young people's movement to the 60s to now, to where like what's it called, that school in Florida?
Where they had the parkland.
I mean, do you see any similarities in the involvement? A lot of young people are starting to, speak up, starting to, maybe I think you're going to see in these midterms, if, all these young people that didn't vote or don't normally vote in midterms, do you think that we're going to see a change now that, all these kids or these young people are starting to kind of create a movement? Do you think,
I don't know. Change is inevitable. Yes, we know that. But from seeing what I see in my community here in Calexico, it's not changing. It's amazing how little people know about anything. okay? And that is very frustrating to me as a teacher. But it goes, we have a tendency to for one reason or another, to create groups of people and then label them. We're the baby boomers. Then came Generation X, I think, and then came whatever is now and then now it's the millennials. The millennials have really been blamed for a lot. And one of the things that millennials have been blamed for is not being politically engaged. And that had the millennials been engaged the way other generations have in the past, we would not have had the results that we did in the last presidential election. Okay. I don't know. I don't know whether that is the answer or not. What I do know is that the young people that are becoming engaged because they have to feel, it's like you have to feel a personal tragedy before you become engaged. So you're actually being reactive rather than active. Had these kids never been shot, who knows where they'd be? They'd probably still be on their cell phones and, looking up what Kim Kardashian is wearing today. So that's a tough one. But the ones that are becoming engaged, if they become consistent in their message, then they're going to have an impact. But we have a tendency, again, as human beings, to react and to blow up and do this, and then it all goes down the river 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What I do know is that I do not see enough young people standing up to the hatred that is being perpetrated by the public figures, whether they be in entertainment or in politics or in anything, that they're not standing up firmly enough to the hatred, to the misogyny, and to the racism. I was just telling my husband last night that what if all of the Mexicans on the other side of the border decided not to come to the U.S. for 2 days only? What would that do? But we don't have that conscience. Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of us don't have that conscience. So how do the young people fit in? Maybe if the telephone cell companies went offline for a month and the kids had to go back to the real life, maybe we would create some sensitivity. But it looks bleak to me just from what I see with my own students.
And now that you mentioned the people from across the border not coming, something that I don't want to get political, but it's because, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because I don't hear people talking about it, and even though it's a far-fetched thing that it probably won't happen, but this person's putting it out there where I'm going to close the borders.
You mean on the U.S. side?
Letting people come in.
Yeah.
You might know who I'm talking about.
I do, and let me tell you, we're already here. Ni modo, we're already here. We're not going anywhere.
But the thing is that what I'm saying is that I don't hear people, bringing it up as a conversation.
No.
Here, especially here, in the sense that if you think about it, like I said, it's a far-fetched thing. He's just throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks, right? But if it would happen, the impact it would have on our community, on our valley, it would be like something
devastating.
Yeah.
But it takes devastating circumstances for people to wake up and smell the coffee. Okay? So you live in Mexicali, voy a comprar mi pollito, voy a comprar los huevos, because we're so enamored with American products. Mm-hmm. And they are better and they are cheaper. But you know what? They're not the only ones. And sometimes we have to sacrifice. Now, I think that the issue also is, and it really, but then again, this is one honest man's opinion, is that the caravan, as we know it, there aren't any Mexicans in there, really. So what do the Mexicans care? The Mexicans are not really engaged. Now, they may be, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it in the Mexican news media other than your regular coverage. Mm. See? So if you cannot relate to the plight of people who have lived and are living under very oppressive circumstances, where they're facing death and corruption day in and day out. If we cannot relate and have that empathy, then we're not going to become engaged. See, what I can tell you is one thing that worries the snot out of me, and that is when the president said that if someone throws a rock, that we will fire. Well, you know what that means? That's an act of war. And we've never thought of, well, I shouldn't say never, in our time, of going to war with Mexico. We go to war with Mexico in words and diatribe, but not when it comes to guns. That scares the crap out of me, you know. And that's where we are. That's where we are.
Yeah. And, I mean, I hate because there's something that I wanted to ask you, like, do you feel like the political environment is more riled up now, where like it's either you're on this side or on this side, and if you're not on my side,
absolutely,
there's a line.
Absolutely, it's very divisive. Okay, and it's up or down, black or white, right or wrong, and neither party, in my opinion, is doing much to alleviate it. One party is doing everything to exacerbate it, and the other party, the compassionate party, they're sitting there rolling. You know, they're just rolling and saying, oh, gee, let's have compassion. Let's do this. It's going to get better. Bullshit. Yeah. It's not going to get better. It's got to get really bad before it does get better. But what this political climate is doing, I see it every day. I see it in my kids. I see it on my dear friends that post on Facebook. That there are two things. One is the outright hatred, and the other is a denial. And both of them are very, very dangerous and very destructive.
Yeah. I stopped posting political stuff on Facebook because it's just, I mean, it's just ugly. It's ugly. The only thing that I did a couple of days ago, I posted something that I read, which was mentioned by a Native American leader, because, you know, they were talking about pro-president, anti-president, blah, blah, blah. And I said, the right wing and the left wing belong to the same bird. I didn't get any negative post on that. And it's kind of hard to argue that. Yeah. But somebody wrote, yeah, but if you wing the bird on the left wing, you can still fly, or some such thing. Well, you know what? Emotion. And another thing that troubles me is how much, quote unquote, the economy means to people, and how much we're giving up just to have a job that pays $20 an hour without any regard for other people that aren't making that, without any regard for the environment, without any regard for anything else. Exactly. It's me. Exactly. Yeah, we've given up our morals and everything. For money and yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, and because I was listening to there's this podcast I listen. It's called The Daily. It's done by the New York Times, and they did a special on, I can't remember the lady's name. She's a Democrat. So, but she was a Democrat who was pro-life, and she tried to pass this law, and it went through, blah, blah, blah. But afterwards, she got so much hate from her own party.
Yes.
And it's like, it's crazy that it's like, this is the Democratic Party, and this is what we believe. And if you don't believe in one of them, like, you're...
It really limits your ability to exercise what your own personal beliefs are. You know, and I have come across friends of mine who will, I mean, they are working towards a particular goal, whether it's going to take, say, this election cycle and another election cycle and so on. But they're doing what they're doing in a very calculated manner, because all that matters to them is to elect pro-life candidates, okay? So if you have a candidate that is, say, a city council candidate that is exceptionally proficient in the city council business, that knows about how to move the city forward and all of this, has nothing to do whether you believe in killing babies or not, okay? But because they know that this person may be pro-life, they're out to destroy that person's career.
Yeah.
You know, where have our respect and our values gone? And how can we, I mean, what we're saying is everything that we do has got to be based on whether I agree with you fundamentally on one thing or not, you know? And that is totally against what our country was founded. Because our country was founded on discourse and you know, on argument and there will never, not for a long time, be another William F. Buckley Jr. and Gore Vidal. You talk about the left wing and the right wing of the bird, and yet they were civil, they were respectful, I don't think that there was anything they ever agreed on, and yet they'd walk out and didn't want to kill each other. And over and above that, they did not inflame their base.
Yeah.
And right now, all we're doing is, it must be all this pent-up anger that we've had over generations that is inflaming us, and we, at the end of the day, don't care. Yeah. You know? So it's very hard to maintain composure and a diplomatic demeanor when things around you are just exploding left and right.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, like you said, it's both sides. It's not.
It is.
It's not only one side.
It is.
Mm-hmm. And it's sad and scary.
It's very scary. And I tell you what, my son is going to be 36 years old. I've done what I think a relatively moderate to good job in raising my boy. But you got little ones. What are you going to teach your kids, and what are they going to be facing 10 years from now when they're 18 and can vote? What are they going to inherit from this mess? Hatred? Misogyny? Racism? Hatred towards poor people? You know?
Yeah.
Greed? I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's on TV every day, you know?
Of course. Of course.
You can't really escape it.
But remember, you can. You can because you can shut down the TV. And it is. It's very easy to blame. But at the end of the day, who is paying the rent? Who has got control over who sits at the dinner table with cell phones or not? See?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot easier not to. Yeah. Let's agree with that.
Yeah, it is. But, I mean, I guess, like, there's a lot of people who are going to argue with you. Like,
sure.
How are you going to take their technology? How are you going to take, that's part of...
Oh, sure. It's the new wave. And I'm not denouncing that, but this morning I was listening to a report on NPR about a school in France. I don't know if you listened to it. There's a school in France that made the move through their board and administration to take away the kids' cell phones for 1 month to do a study as to what were the repercussions. Well, there were less school fights. There was definitely no cyberbullying. Kids became a lot more sociable. They became a lot more engaged. They were actually remembering lessons. I mean, and you know what? You cannot argue against facts.
Yeah.
See?
And the thing is that it's kind of hard, like, to me, because, my youngest is 10, and, he doesn't know life without technology. Right?
Yeah, they're wired for it.
So, but there's times where, like he'll bring up facts, and I'm like, he's lying, right? Or he's just making up.
And he's true.
Yeah, and I look it up, and he's right. I'm like, where did you hear that? Oh, I was watching this YouTube video or whatever. I'm like, so, like, it's like,
but let me interrupt. But the thing is, are they facts that are needed for us, or are they just facts that it's because you need to know that?
The times where he's surprised me is like historical facts.
Excellent.
Abraham Lincoln
Excellent.
Stuff,
beautiful.
Stuff, like
beautiful.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the times where I can remember where he's told me something. I'm like.
So he's engaged. Yeah. And that's the thing, as a teacher, I think I have to always give my kids credit. They have a lot of knowledge. It may not be terribly useful knowledge, but they have a lot of knowledge. And but here I am when I give the kids a pretest on wars. and I ask them, name me 3 big wars in the world. And inevitably, straight across the board, the first one they mention is the Cold War.
Which
is not even a war, okay? And so to go back and try to teach that, that's really hard. Once in a while, I do have this one student that graduated last year. When I asked if anybody knew what the name of the plane that dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was, one student knew it. Not only did she know it, but she knew who the plane, what the name meant. And I got on my knees and said, there is a God, because out of this one kid that knows all this history, something's going to come out.
Yeah.
But I think we do have to be accepting of the fact that the knowledge that kids need now is not the knowledge that you and I needed. You know, it would be wonderful. But you know what? Everything comes full circle. There will come a time when kids are going to need to know what happened during the Dark Ages and what happened during the Renaissance and so on. It's not happening now, and it's not going to for a while. But we always make that full circle.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I was watching, I can't remember what news, whatever, that there was I think it was like a smallpox epidemic I think in England or somewhere.
Uh-huh.
So it's like you're going back to like, and sometimes it's because people like don't want to, you know, these, I don't know, what do you call these people that don't feel vaccines are.
Yes, that's a whole different issue. Yes.
Yeah.
But you know what? Giving credit where credit is due, it's my understanding that it isn't that they are against the vaccinations. They are against the way that vaccinations are administered. And if you read all the research that Joseph Kennedy has done on vaccinations, out of there's a handful of companies in the world, but in the United States in particular, that are totally protected by the U.S. government for what they do and don't do and how they do it. It is the companies that make vaccines. Yeah. So what the argument by a lot of these folks is, a lot is not as good as very little, or very little is as good as a lot. And so they're trying to prove that these high doses of vaccination that children get are causing too many more problems, and that a small dose would still immunize the child against a particular disease and maybe not be causing all these autism things. So there's some very sound arguments, you know. But again, we're more and more fragmented, you know.
And I think it has to be allowed with, you know, social media.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And going back to social media, I felt that during June, the June elections,
yes,
you used your social media involvement really well.
I did. Well, I didn't. I have 2 very talented people. One of them is a former student, and the other one is a protege. That again, they're wired for it. I wouldn't know how to upload something on Facebook more than I would know how to get to China. You know. Yeah. But yes, and that it's amazing. Oh, I saw you on Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
I saw you on the daily on Instagram. It's like, oh, this is Galindo again.
And I don't have Instagram, so I don't know what that is, you know. And I don't carry my cell phone with me. I do check my messages, but that has proven to be, it's been interesting because it's proven to be also, again, a conduit for people to vent. And there are some people that have come out with some very vile comments, whether it's true anger towards me or just anger within themselves and the world.
And that's one of the reasons why I stopped doing the Facebook Live thing, because it's distracting. I have a guest that I try to, you know, talk to, have a conversation, make the person feel comfortable. And if I'm looking at Facebook, like the comments that people are leaving on the comment section, and the person's doing the same thing, you know, it distracts you. No, not only that, but it's uncomfortable. Like, like, is she seeing all this things, things that the people are putting up there? It's like, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stop doing the Facebook Live because, it's just like you said, it's a way to vent, and it's a way to people who have free speech, which is, you know, okay, but you know, at the same time, you got to be respectful for, you know, whoever is I don't know. There's limits, I guess.
Yeah, and Gilly saw that all the time. When Gilly
Yeah.
used to do his podcast, I did it twice, and all these comments would come up that were so out of this world. But again, todo mundo se pasa. And we understand that. So maintaining a balance is very important. What we did when we got negative comments, and we didn't get as many as we thought we might. If they were outright offensive, we pulled them. And I bet you we didn't pull more than 2 or 3 of them. If they were just hateful, we answered to them and let them go. And it was interesting because not too long ago, 2 or 3 days ago, we had a pretty hateful comment come up. And we didn't know who the person was, so we looked it up. Well, all of these person's friends, first of all, most of them aren't even in the valley, and they are all friends of the opponent. So it goes to show, you take your sides, and there's nothing that's going to do to change. But it is a good forum, and it is part of the future. How many 60-year-old voters are looking at my ads on Facebook to make a determination? That I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think as time progresses, in 2 more years when we have the next election, you might have more than you think, until eventually everything may be done through
social media.
through the social media. I mean, that's manifested by the low circulation of newspapers. And you'll say, oh, did you read that in the paper? No, I don't read the paper.
Yeah. It's sad because it's a solid way of putting out information.
And it's immediate. It's
yeah.
immediate.
Yeah. And it's good. It's information that needs to be, it's researched information.
Yes, it needs to be disseminated. Absolutely.
It's not somebody sitting at their computer and typing away what they feel or what, their thoughts.
Yeah.
It's, factual stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the things that people don't understand or look through when they're reading a news article on Facebook.
Yeah.
Most of the times it's you just got to look at who it's coming from to know whether it's truth or just
and that goes back again to how we're very trusting, and I'll use my students as an example. I said, okay, you guys need to do a research on who invented the artificial heart. Well, they hit artificial heart on Google and they get 2 million hits, but you know what, they're not going to go beyond Wikipedia. See, so that's where we have to be the ones that teach them to scrutinize. And okay, read Wikipedia, but then go to hit number 120 and see what that says, and then you'll begin to find opposite views and opposite types of information. But again, we live in an instant world. We want instant and immediate rewards. And if you can Google it and it's there, even though you're not going to retain it, there it is.
Yeah.
And that's what we battle, I think, as teachers, is we have to stay, we're expected to teach the kids many things and to at least retain them till they take their next test. And boy, that's a challenge,
voter turnout. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Voter turnout?
Here, especially in the Valley.
Well, the Valley runs on high voter turnout election years. It's between 19 and 22%. Don't quote me on it, but it's around that. We have 179,000 people that live here, and I want to say somewhere between 50 and 55,000 are registered voters. Okay. However, there have been some changes that have been implemented as a result of citizen concerns with the county registrar of voters and how things have been done in the past. And just everything from how the ballots are handled to how slowly the results are being being announced and broadcasted. So this committee has brought about a lot of changes, and the county, to its credit, this year they have the little voting mobile unit, and they've been parking it at the street fairs and so on, with the idea of encouraging more people to vote. So, as of last night, we were discussing the number of people, and there are now, I think, at the registrar's office as we speak, approximately 6,000 absentee ballots that have come in. That's a very large number. I think compared to the last election, it was 3,000. Part of it, I think, has got to do with this promotional activity, with this encouragement, but a lot of it also may have to do with the fact that it is a high turnout election, but we are expecting a turnout of well over 22%. We'll see.
And do you feel it's because of the national thing that, the...
Could be. I think everything that happens at the national level does have a tendency to trickle down locally, Here in California, we have a gubernatorial race. We have some very serious propositions that are up. There are people that are out there. I'm only there to vote no on this proposition or yes, regardless of anything else. So I think it's a combination of everything. But starting next year, because a lot of the people choose now to vote absentee. Okay. And then our registrar of voters has also made a lot of the precincts mail-in precincts. I live out in the country, and I used to be able to go to the Barbara Worth Country Club and just vote. And it's like going to the bank and handing your own cash, right? Then about 2 elections ago, I started getting my absentee ballots. So now you got to fill it in and send it in. Okay, 68 cents or 72 cents. I can't remember the amount. Starting at next year, I want to say 2019, you do not have to put a stamp on your ballot to send it. And today, as we speak, San Diego County Board of Supervisors passed a resolution that if you send your absentee ballot without sufficient postage or without postage at all, that the county will absorb the cost so the ballot is counted. Because we are in an era of voter suppression, okay? Yeah. And it's very easy for you to say, how could you not come up with 68 cents? Well, you know what? There are some people that can't. And there are people who are going to forget. And there are all kinds of things.
Or people that, I don't want to go to the post office.
I don't want to go to the post office, and I don't have any stamps now. So on the one hand, we keep trying to make it easier. On the other hand, we keep making it harder. Yeah. Fortunately, I think that the courts are still working in favor of the voters, of the disenfranchised voters, but the problem again is, are they going to vote? Are they going to vote? Are they going to get out and vote? And it's great that they turn out and vote today. Are they going to go out and vote in March again? And so on and so forth. And those are issues that we need to continue to address. I mean, look at the race in Texas with Beto and Cruz, For all intents and purposes, if all the people that follow Beto voted, he'd be a shoo-in. But the statistics are not in his favor. Yeah. So again, apathy will take you only so far. And I sometimes, when I hear people complain, I just say, did you vote? Well, it doesn't make any difference. Well, you know what? It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, I think I was, for a long time, I was that type of person where I was like, why am I going to vote? Especially for, like, my local election. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, like, yeah, it's a popularity contest, But, I feel like if I go vote, and if whoever I voted or whatever pop I voted for didn't pass, is like, at least But remember also how you can influence, because yes, to Joe down the street, it may be whether he likes this guy or not. To you, you're going to look at his issues. And you're not only going to vote on his issues, but you're going to say to your wife, you know what? Think about this guy. So it's a slow process. It's not an immediate change, but it does make a difference. Yeah. And in Calexico, where 5 votes can make a difference, you bet you need to be informed. Yeah. Again, it goes back to, where were you when the debates were going on? When were you when candidate so-and-so was standing there talking about raising the water rates? And where were you in, pinning his butt to the ground and saying this, and that? But it takes work. Yeah. It takes work. And sometimes, due to our own struggles with just life and putting food on the table, we don't do that. But again, we have to make this a priority, because our country is in very dire, serious situations. And this is one of the places where I feel that we could use social media a little bit better.
Indeed. Indeed.
Where we can't go, but at the end of the day, like, somebody did a Facebook Live, or it's on YouTube. I feel that I feel like I feel repetitive because every guest,
Yes.
almost every guest I have, I bring up the same subject where, this kind of venue, a podcast. There's a lot of podcasts out there that are really informative, but people don't, whether it's you rather listen to music, but to me it's like if I'm out walking or driving, I rather listen to a podcast. Something that I know it's gonna educate me in something.
Just tell you something.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm if I can't sit down and watch the news, at least for the time I'm walking, I'm trying to listen to a podcast that'll inform me in that sense. And I feel that that's we should take advantage of the technology in that sense, where
it can work very much in our favor. And with the issue we've got a myriad of prepositions, and I'm very scrutinizing on those. And a friend of mine said, well, tell me how you're going to vote on these. And I said, yeah, I'll tell you how I'm going to vote on them, but I'm going to tell you why. Okay? Because if I choose to vote yes on something, I'm going to tell you why I think it should be yes versus no. And it took me probably a good 4 to 6 hours to read everything, because after I've read it, then I go look at the endorsements. Okay? So if the Ku Klux Klan is endorsing or the Grand Dragon is endorsing something, chances are I'm not going to vote for it. Oh yeah. But again, who wants to take the time to read these prepositions? Well, if you're not going to do it, at least look at the groups that are sponsoring or opposing them. And if you seem to fit, say, with AARP, the senior citizens, if it's opposing it, then it's probably something that would affect you as a senior citizen, and at least use some kind of judgment.
Yeah, I mean, not 100%, but you're a little bit more,
One of the things that just fries my gizzard when I read the ballots is the translation of the ballots into Spanish.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's embarrassing and it's misleading. Nobody's taking them to task.
Yeah.
It is definitely not user-friendly. But that's why, and word of mouth sometimes is the best advertisement. But you all have to have a reason. Well, why are you voting no on this, or why are you voting yes? And then if you say it and you fit into that agenda, all power to you.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a dinner conversation where
exactly.
You look at the
exactly,
and like, oh.
Yeah, and then there are those that are going to vote directly on the party line, and this is if you are a staunch member of a particular party, you can have the devil as the candidate, but you're going to vote for it because of your loyalty. Yeah. That you can't change, move on.
Yeah.
Go to those that you can be able to change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned Gil earlier.
Gilly.
How do you feel the involvement of especially like in local politics? Like Gil, you have David here. I don't know in other places, but I feel like there's a lot of. Last year we had Angel Esparza, was also relatively young. How do you feel like younger people getting involved in like their local politics?
Well, let me use Gilly as an example. Gilly, in the course of the last 3 years that he did his podcasts, was a diamond in the raw, okay? And the best thing about that is that Gilly learned a lot. Regardless of what we did or didn't do or agreed or didn't do. Gilly learned a lot. And he has enough of an open mind to be able to question. And maybe he didn't even question it during the podcast, but he went back and researched. And he started to see how sometimes the system was working against him. Personally, I think Gilly was used by people in powerful positions. And Gilly is very naive and very good-hearted. And these people were feeding him information so that in other words, Gilly was taking out the trash for other people. Who was getting the crap for it? It was Gilly. It wasn't the people that were spiting him on. So I'm glad that he stopped and smelled the coffee and realized, I'm not going to take out your trash. I don't care if you're a supervisor or whether you're the head of this department or not. Because people were living vicariously through him. And they were manipulating him. And out of his own kindness, he was doing it. And in the course of that, he made some enemies.
Yeah.
Okay? But at the end of the day, Gilly learned a tremendous lesson. I think he really found where his place in society is, where his place is in Brawley society, and he decided to become engaged. And anybody that does what Gilly did has got my respect unconditionally, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. My job is when I see these young kids, they're all full of it. My job as a teacher, of course, I never forget that, is to take them aside and say, calmala, calmala, But that comes with youth. I used to be no different than that. And hopefully they're not going to be so in love with themselves or so narcissist that they're not going to listen to you. Young people are like sponges. They suck up the knowledge that you give them. And if they know you're doing it in goodwill, they're going to take it. It may take a process, some time, but I encourage anybody to start, but don't take anybody's trash. If somebody comes and tells you, oh, yeah, I want you to attack the supervisor or this because he did this and that, and out of your kindness of your heart, you say, yeah, that guy, you know what? No, you come on my show and you attack him.
Yeah.
And hopefully Gilly learned something from that because he was used. And, but, Gilly is now in a better position. And I have a feeling he's going to win this election. And if he shouldn't win it, he's got his name out there. And only 2 years from now, he can run again.
Yeah. And I interviewed him, was it like a month ago?
You did?
Yeah. And, I mean, he's a different Gil.
Very. Very.
Like,
he's very introverted when you know him personally. You know that.
Yeah.
And when you put him behind a mic or a camera, he turns into, he's a Jekyll Hyde.
No, but the thing is that even after like him behind the mic, he's like focused.
He's now focused. Yeah.
He knows where he's going.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for him. Like
I am too.
Hopefully
I am too.
He wins. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it's good that young people are getting involved. If they don't win, like they already know what it entitles, like all the ropes, for the candidacy, like running, going, walking and knocking on doors, talking to people. Like they already have that knowledge. So in the future, if they want to do it again, they.
And we need to put our money where our mouth is because we spew a lot of rhetoric about encouraging young people. But what happens when an 18-year-old files for city council? Oh, he's just a kid. He's not. Yeah, you're right. But it is our job to teach him. Que se dé sus chingazos y aprenda. Mm-hmm. Let him learn by hitting himself on the pavement. But you've got to encourage that. You cannot discourage that. Yeah. Unless it's the Grand Dragon, and then maybe you can do something about that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that person can become...
they will. If they stay focused, they will. Yeah, they will.
They'll all be involved at a young age, and in the future they'll be, a great.
So it's important that they pick some of the seniors, the senior statesmen locally as their role models, and get grandfathered by them and learn the ropes. Part of being young is I know it all and I know how to do it all by myself. Well, that's not true. Neither one of them is true. But if there are senior office holders that don't see them as threats, but see them as potential benefits, take them under your wing and teach them.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that Gil did. He has a lot of people that he's
that
trusting.
mentored him. Yeah.
And that he trusts, that he knows that are doing a good for him.
He's doing so well now that he wears a monkey suit every day, and he combs his hair and puts gel on it. So
he's a totally different guy. And I was talking to him last night, and we're both excited to see what happens.
It's good.
Yeah, he's
good.
I want it to be Tuesday already, just to get it out of the way, and whatever happens.
Welcome to the new world, Gilly.
Yeah. So we're already an hour and 15 minutes in.
Oh my God! Okay.
We touched a lot of topics. I feel like you're a very knowledgeable person.
Not about technology, Mr. Alejos.
Yeah. I try not to be, like put on my, especially on my podcast, put out,
antagonistic or
just like say like, oh, vote for this person. Because, I'm just here for the information for the people out in the valley in Calexico. But this Tuesday, we're having the elections. At least you already heard, the people out there heard your story, heard where you're coming from, heard what your thoughts and what your plans are for your IID, and maybe they'll have a better understanding of what it is, to vote for an IID candidate, and they'll take into consideration, both candidates and see what. I don't know Mr. Zaragoza personally.
Would he not come on your podcast?
Yeah, but I didn't reach out, or I was busy these couple of weeks. And it's kind of hard for me, like, like you said, like, I can't go to a debate because I have taking my kids to practice.
Sure.
This is Saturday mornings is my only window of opportunity to do this, because I have to go home after this and edit and stuff like that.
Oh, sure.
So it's a process. But I mean, I'm sure that if they want to reach out to him, like, he'll talk to people who are still undecided. But anything else you would like to add?
Yes, well, I would like to conclude with a couple of thoughts. First of all, thank you unconditionally for allowing me to come. And you yourself has come a long way in evolving as far as your interview processes. So it can only get better. And I suggest that since we lost Gilly, you're the only one doing this, that you stick with it. Yeah. You stick with it, and a year from now, we're really going to be able to see how not only your program has evolved, but how you yourself have evolved. Okay, having said so much, I think that my closing statement has got to be that anybody in Imperial County who lives here and who uses water has got to be very, very aware of the implications of what we are facing if this lawsuit that the farming family made would stand, okay? And I want you to think about a couple of things. The great majority of you listening, if you are, I would hope have gone through Blythe and Palo Verde. When you drive through Blythe, you have a grocery store, you've got a couple of Dollar Tree stores, you've got a myriad of gas stations, and then you've got a Starbucks and maybe a Pizza Hut and a McDonald's. Blythe, 40 years ago, was a thriving community like El Centro. But when the farmers in Blythe chose to sell the water, everything started shutting down. So much so that when you drive through the main street, you still see old stores that are boarded up. So what happens when this occurs? People move out. People can no longer sustain. They don't have jobs to sustain them. Is that likely to happen here in the Valley? Over my dead body if I have anything to say. But it could very well happen if things go in favor of privatizing the water, which means changing the way the water is administered and run to a private party, okay? And then, of course, that would also have repercussions on the on the power side. Yeah. Now, you mentioned Carlos Zaragoza. One of the things that I encourage voters is find out where a candidate stands. Ask him or her, where do you stand on this issue? What Carlos Zaragoza is going to do is tell you, in many ways, that he's not willing to take a position because he says it's in the courts, I'll let the courts decide. The reality is he's not willing to take a position because he is being funded, privately and otherwise, by the people whose interests are to get a hold of the water. It's that simple. Carlos Zaragoza did not file to run for this until the last day of the filing date. He had been vacillating whether to do school board first, then he thought of assessor, then he thought of board of supervisor. What kind of dedication can a person have when you're wondering, well, okay, am I going to eat at Carino's or at Grasso's or at Olive Garden? Well, you know what? No, you have to have some dedication. And my concern is that his alliance to Ronnie Lime Gruber and to Imperial Valley First, who are the ones that really want this lawsuit to stand, is going to add more. If he were to be elected, it's going to add more fragmentation to an already fragmented board. and it's going to create more chaos, and in the end, it's going to hurt the residents of Imperial Valley. So please, when you look at the issue, just look at a simple issue, dear voters. Do you want the water to be run and administered, the delivery of water, to be run and administered by the board that has taken an oath to be loyal and preserve it under the California Constitution? Or do you want a group of people who want to use the water for purposes of making a profit, not for the community, but for themselves? If you can make that distinction, the vote is very clear. And I thank you for allowing me to try to make these points.
You're welcome. And well, thank you for being here.
Hey,
it's
I'll be back.
yeah. Hopefully you'll be back.
Yeah.
I would like to talk some more. I know you have a lot of history in the valley.
I do. I'm very loyal.
You're a great storyteller, just like
Yeah.
John Moreno. You guys have.
Yeah.
I'll go to your classroom and fix something, and we'll talk about something, and it'll be a while. And you're a great storyteller. So.
I think we had very lonely childhoods, so our imaginations really soared. You
didn't have social media. That's why.
There you go.
That's
yeah,
why.
there you go.
But yeah, once again, thank you, and thank you for the listeners. Thank you to Calexico Brewing Company for allowing me to record here once again. Make sure you stop by and grab a pint, drink local.
I love. I love the Humble Farmer at the North End. And this is my South End. And how cool is it to be able to walk into a beer shop at 10 in the morning? I mean, there's perks to this.
The good thing about, our local brewers are they're really, tight-knit
They're
community. They
and they're young kids. Yeah. And I love this. Entrepreneurship is wonderful.
Yeah. They're doing a great job at bringing that community vibe into our valley. And once again, thank you to them. Thank you for listeners. And don't forget, you can be a sponsor of the podcast. If you really like the podcast, go to my Anchor page. You can donate $1 a month, $5, whatever you want. It'll help me get better equipment. But make sure to go to my Anchor page. Go to my Facebook page. I post a lot of upcoming interviews there. Don't forget to vote this November 6th.
And let me just add that I think that this can be a very good conduit for just community information, whether it's an election year or not.
Yeah, I mean,
okay?
right now.
So I would encourage you to have all of the people that are trying to raise the water rates here in Calexico come and try to justify it to the community why they need to raise the water rates.
Yeah, they're more than welcome.
There you go, starting with Mr. Dale.
Okay. Mr. Dale, hit me up if you want to come by.
There you go. We'll buy you a beer so you can convince me that I can pay more for the water.
Exactly.
Even though you're buying it for less.
And it'll probably raise my beer prices too because, they use water.
Hey. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you guys. Peace.